welcome back to my channel. You are watching New Light Pets. This here is my friend Lili. It has been a minute since my last video. I've had a lot going on, so I apologize for not being here, but I am very excited to have a fun video for you guys today. I recently did a video about what I felt were the top beginner snakes for people who maybe have never had pet snakes before. And today we are going to talk about the top beginner lizards for people who have never kept reptiles before or just want to get to know what a good option would be for their first time. Now, I will say I don't really feel that there is any true beginner reptile of any sort. All reptiles and exotic pets require a lot of research, a lot of time, and a lot of understanding. All of them have very specific care requirements, so it should not be looked upon as a beginner, easy pet to have. However, there are definitely specific species, in my opinion, that are really great to start off with. I will also say that I do think if there's a specific species that I don't mention in this video or that you hear from other reptile keepers as being beginners, still, I think if you're willing to put in the research and the time and the effort, then go for that species as your first pet reptile. After all, it's just best that you go with what you're going to be interested in and wanting to take care of. Reptiles do live a long time, so if you get an animal that you don't really have interest in, it's not going to be fair to that animal in the long run. And even though I do love my precious bearded dragon Lili here, I will say that bearded dragons are not on this list. So let's get to the top 4 pet lizards that I recommend as beginner and or first pet lizards. So the first one I'm going to talk about is maybe one that you're probably not very familiar with, and that is a Cuban false chameleon. This here is Penelope, and she is a Cuban false chameleon that I've had for a little over a year now. As you can see, she is very mellow. She is not very flighty. These guys are very docile and handleable, in my opinion. Although they don't like to be handled for very long periods of time, she still is great to take out once in a while. She just kind of hangs out like this, which is really great, I feel like, especially for people who aren't used to handling lizards or reptiles in general. These guys also have a fairly easy diet. I don't really feel like any reptile has an easy diet, but hers, unlike an omnivore, is pretty basic. She will eat insects, and then also in the wild, they mainly feed on snails. You can buy a can of snails and feed them that with a variety of other insects to supplement as well. She's trying to climb my hair. Oh, Penelope. It is important to note that you shouldn't just feed any reptile one thing over and over and over again. Just like us, they do need a variety in their diet. But unlike something like a bearded dragon, she's just going to require insects and snails rather than a variety of insects and vegetables, etc., etc. As you can see, Penelope likes to be up high because they are an arboreal species, so their cage and space requirements are going to be something like a minimum of an 18 by 24 by 36 enclosure, which I feel like is a really decent size. Simple enclosure, it doesn't take up too much space. So I feel for a first-time reptile keeper, this is something that is very doable. However, I will say the problem with these guys is they're going to be a lot more difficult to find. They are a lot less common than, say, a leopard gecko or a bearded dragon. You're not going to find these guys as easily, but you can check with good quality breeders and Morph Market and places like that. They are out there. They're just not quite as common. All right, so the next lizard that I would like to recommend as a beginner starter lizard would be a crested gecko. I did have a wonderful little crested gecko who has sadly recently passed, which was very, very heartbreaking. She was an older lady and I rescued her at a very old age and she did just pass. Like a Cuban false chameleon, they don't have a huge space requirement. They only really require the same as the Cuban false chameleon. So an 18 by 24 by 36 minimum. And they are definitely handleable, but unlike the Cuban false chameleon, you will see that they are a lot more jumpy, a lot more flighty, especially the young ones, the babies. This might be something that makes you a little bit on edge or kind of throws you off guard if you're not used to that, but you certainly can handle them, and with more time and patience, they become more and more handleable. However, they also do all have different personalities, so don't fully quote me on that. I think my favorite thing about a crested gecko is that their diet is so simple. Thankfully, they have mastered a very simple powder formula to feed your crested gecko, so something like Pangea or Repashy makes a great high quality crested gecko food that is just a powder that you mix with water and you feed to your gecko. It has all their supplements in it and it is just so easy. However, especially the younger ones and some older ones do need to have some insects in their diet as well, but with that and just the Pangea, it's pretty basic. Another great thing about crested geckos is that they are so very widely available. You will see them at almost every reptile expo, every reptile shop. And with that being said, they might even be a little bit overproduced. So my recommendation would be to check out a local reptile rescue or just animal rescue. It's likely that you will probably find one in need of a home. The next lizard we're going to talk about is a blue-tongued skink. This is Ozzy, my rescue blue-tongued skink, and she may not be the absolute prime example as she came from a very abusive home. She was very neglected and not treated well at all. So she did take a long time to tame down and trust me and become more handleable, but she does still have a bit of a defensive tendency, and rightfully so. She is still handleable, as you can see, but she also just prefers to cruise around on the floor like a little sausage puppy. Something I really love about blue-tongued skinks is that not only are they adorable, but they are just very chill lizards for the most part. Many that I've come in contact with are just very laid-back demeanors. I take Ozzy outside all the time and let her hang out in the grass with me. She loves to have snacks and just bask in the sun. I do think that a lot of blue-tongued skinks are just really pleasant personalities and great for first-time reptile and or lizard owners. Now, these guys will definitely require a lot more space. It is recommended that they have at least a 4x2x2 enclosure. However, I would personally say to have the minimum be at least a 5x2x2. That's what I have Ozzy housed in, and she uses every square inch of that. They are a bit on the larger size, as you saw with Ozzy. She is a full-grown female northern blue-tongued skink. I will also note that I feel the northerns tend to be maybe the easier species of blue tongues than something like a Halomahera. That's going to require a much higher humidity level. So just make sure if you are considering a skink that you are doing a lot of research on your specific species. Blue tongues also have A complex yet pretty easy diet. They are scavengers by nature. They are omnivores, so they do require a lot of variety. However, they eat just about anything. Not saying that you should feed them anything, but the main recommended source of food for them is actually dog food, wet dog food, a high quality brand. This sounds very odd, but it actually works well. I like to blend up a dog food with fresh leafy greens and veggies and her supplements, blend them all together and then freeze them in an ice cube tray, and then just pop one out when it's time to feed her. And that way she's getting a well-rounded, balanced diet. And then she also gets supplemental insects and then treats like fruit and veggies here and there as well. Even though a blue tongue might have more requirements than some of the other lizards I'm mentioning in this video, I do feel like their personalities are so overlooked, and many people will often go for something like a bearded dragon, but a blue tongue skink is just an amazing choice and so personable and can make a great first pet. All right, now for my final pick of beginner lizards, we are going with the beloved leopard gecko. Now, I felt these guys were a good choice because leopard geckos are generally very handleable, very sweet, adorable, friendly lizards, and they are a little bit more easy to care for than something than, say, your bearded dragon. Their space requirements are going to be a bit smaller, so something like a 36 by 18 by 18 is going to be the bare minimum requirement. However, I do recommend always going bigger because a leopard gecko will certainly use all of that space. In my opinion, a 4 by 2 by 2 would be a better minimum requirement for an adult leopard gecko because they are so active. They are nocturnal, so you might not see them so active during the day, but at night they will be out cruising around. I love how gentle most of these guys are, and they are also very, very widely available. Like a crested gecko, I do feel that they are actually overproduced as well. So once again, I would really recommend looking into local rescues because there are so many leopard geckos being rehomed. They also do have rather long lifespans, typically about 20 to 25 years. So you are definitely signing up for quite the commitment if you get a young leopard gecko. But as you can see, like Scooter here, they are very chill lizards. I really love the personality of these guys, and their behavior is just really fun to watch. They're very, very interesting animals. Their diets are not too terribly complex as they are strictly insectivores, so they will just need a big variety of insects. Of course, we are not sticking with one insect. Don't just feed them crickets all the time. They will need a variety. So if you are cool with the insect part, then these guys can make amazing pet lizards. I mean, just look at that face. It really doesn't get any cuter than that. All right, guys, well, that's all that I have for you today. Hopefully this gave you a little food for thought if you are considering getting a pet lizard. And as always, look into adoption first. Any of the species that I mentioned today are very, very, very mass produced and are often wound up in shelters. And of course, always do plenty of research. I do have care guides about a few of these guys that I mentioned today, and I will put the links in the description below. And until next time, happy reptile keeping, and I'll see you all soon.